What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN's Best of PC 2016. I'm your host, James Duggan, joined by Dan Stapleton, Brandon Tyrell, and Chloe Rad. And the nominees are that we're going to be discussing for the next approximately 30 minutes. Battlefield 1, Civilization 6, Overwatch, Firewatch, Darkest Dungeon, Titanfall 2, The Witness, Doom, Stardew Valley, and XCOM 2. All right, let's start with Battlefield 1. Chloe, you reviewed this game.
Yep.
You thought the era-appropriate weaponry really kind of spoke to the balance of the multiplayer as well as the fun factor. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so for me, one of the biggest things about Battlefield is kind of that absurd theatricality of like these emergent narratives that take place on the battlefield. And I think that the super outdated like World War I era tanks and weapons added a lot of awesome chemistry to that. Like so much military technology was invented in this time period, and all the weapons look like they're falling apart. And it adds a lot to like the comedy of Battlefield for me, which is kind of a weird thing to say about it, but
like a juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's like you have these super intense, gritty battles, but then like an A7V lumbers over and it looks like just this moving fortress. Like it's
Sure.
Yeah, so it adds a lot to that. But also, I think what's really cool about this kind of old school arsenal is that it adds a lot of interesting constraint. You don't have something like the engineer class that can just whip out an RPG and take out a tank right away. So it kind of adds more interesting interplay between the classes, which I think you have a lot to say about that yourself.
Yeah, we were talking about the RPG that isn't there, and that increases the time to kill on vehicles drastically, or at least you need to get closer to a vehicle. The tanks, on the other hand, are slower, but they don't feel like they're made of paper.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really like, Battlefield Hardline kind of shifted away from team cohesion in the sense that you didn't need to drop a med pack or drop ammo.
Yeah.
You could go up and grab it. And I was talking to some of the developers, and they were like, no, in Battlefield 1, we want teams to work together. We want people to be rewarded for when they use team play.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Battlefield 1, echoing kind of what you said, is it is this like stripped down kind of feel, right? Like biplanes, like you don't have the death from above scenario. Nobody has got the weapon that kills everyone, right? Like there are very clear checks and balances in that game, and you do feel useful in your particular situation, rather than just I pick the best class that statistically is going to get me the best percentage of a win rate.
It's
right?
the class fantasy of being a single part of a team as opposed to the entire thing.
Yeah.
On top of that, I just love how it looks. Like,
Yeah.
it's an
I mean, oh my
incredibly
God, it's
atmospheric game.
gorgeous.
I love to just play as a medic and hang back and watch other people fight. That's because I'm not that great at it, but I love to watch other people fight in this game because it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Sure. I also think bringing up the vehicle spawn system and capturing points with the express idea of unlocking an extra tank for your team is really cool. I've always had a problem with like, okay, I spawn closest to the helicopter, so now I get to fly the helicopter.
Yeah. I agree.
And Battlefield 1 does away with that. But let's talk about the single player. Chloe, you liked it at least a bit. I think that historically Battlefield campaigns have been a little bit perfunctory. Did you still get a sense of that?
Yeah, so in a year of great single-player campaigns for shooters, Battlefield 1's campaign doesn't really shine, but I appreciate it for doing something different compared to the previous, Battlefield 3 and 4's campaign. This one actually stood out a little bit for doing the kind of vignette style attempt at being a bit more poignant, with the subject matter. Like World War I was one of the most horrific events in human history and stuff, and I think it treated that it handled that really well while also being really fun.
Sure.
That's kind of a dissonance that a lot of shooter games have trouble with, but
Unlike Battlefield 3 and 4, it was actually fun.
yeah, that too.
And you get to play a pigeon, so I mean.
Yeah, actually, talking very briefly about the pigeon, that was one of the most powerful moments for me, actually. The idea that you don't really know what's going to happen, but then you realize, oh my God, he's delivering the coordinates to destroy the tank that you're in.
Yeah.
I thought he was just going to poop on a German.
I mean, we haven't had a good pigeon game
Probably
since
also
Hatful Boyfriend, I think. So it's been a couple years.
Speaking of the next nominee for PC Game of the Year 2016, Hatful Boy now. Okay. But seriously, let's move on.
God,
Civilization 6. Dan Stapleton, you reviewed this. You are the Civ guy. How do you think this is different enough from the previous Civ games to kind of stand on its own 2 feet?
And there are two big differences. One is that it launched with pretty much every feature that Civilization 5 has after 2 expansions. So it's a really, really full-feeling game. It has, espionage. It has more built-out diplomacy. It has trade. It has all these things. On top of that, it has a entirely new city-building mechanic where you actually place your districts on the map where your specialized buildings go, and that really adds a kind of a sense of puzzle solving to each of these cities that you're building, because you have to adapt them to the terrain that you're on, because there are a bunch of adjacency things you have to worry about. There are some things have to be built next to rivers. Some have to be built next to mountains. Some things have to be built next to other things you've built. So there's just a lot more going on than just like going into a city and saying, okay, I want to build all of these buildings here in this one city, and every city has all of these buildings. Now you have to pick and choose, and certain buildings can only be built in certain cities, including wonders, which I think is a huge change. And also you have to consider, do I want to build a bunch of districts here? Do I want to keep mining these tiles for resources? So there's just a whole nother layer there going on, in addition to new takes on all of these different systems.
Sure. A problem that I've had with the Civ series is this exponential increase in things that you have to do. The first turn, you have a single action. The 100th turn, you have 40. And the way that they've kind of dealt with that a little bit, or at least the minutia, because you do want to make those choices, but managing a bunch of workers was just kind of a pain in the butt. Now, I think it's very smart that the way they changed builders to have 3 charges. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, in previous Civilization games, you would build a bunch of workers and generally automate them, and they would go out and do their thing. As technology advanced, they would implement new improvements on tiles, and you would never really have to worry about them. But they were just always there in the background, taking up CPU cycles, making your turns last longer. And now they're just limited use things. You can get, but you can send them out and they can improve 5 different things, and you actually have to think about each thing that you're upgrading instead of just automating them. And high level players would never automate regardless, but I'm not that high level. So like that in itself changes things dramatically, and it just cuts down on the number of units moving around both for you and for all the AI players, and making your turns not last quite as long.
All right, the final thing I want to touch on with Civ 6 briefly is the barrier of entry for newer players. Do you think that this is an easier game for newer players to pick up than Civ 5?
Not necessarily. I think they're very similar in that way. They both have Civ 6 is very iterative on Civ 5 in a lot of ways, and one of those is the UI, which is very directed relative to what Civilization 4 was. It's always, just look in the bottom right of the screen, it'll tell you what you have to do next. And so you really can't play this game without doing all the things you need to do. You might not understand them all at first. But the nice thing is you don't really need to. Like you can learn to specialize in one thing at a time, especially on the lower difficulty levels, and you can still succeed.
Great. Brandon, this next question is coming to you. And of course, it's one of my personal favorites, Overwatch. So I think it's no secret that this is a very strong contender for maybe even our game of the year. But certainly a very strong contender for our PC Best of 2016. Can you articulate exactly why you think that is?
No.
Cool, moving on.
Yeah, all right, next game. I think Overwatch is one of those... Oh man, Overwatch is one of those games where it is something more than the sum of its parts, I think, if you will. Like you and I were talking about it earlier. Overwatch, I mean, look at it mechanically breaking down to the ingredients that make up the game. You've got so many different ranges of playstyles with the characters, right? Like you've got the Call of Duty character, which is Soldier. You've got the Quake character, which is Pharah. You've got... mixed in with that, different kind of play styles, and then all of that meshes into this team dynamic. So I think there's enough for people to play and like grasp onto that they can sort of make that game their own. And then outside of that, you have, each of these characters represents something totally different, right? And the reason I might want to play a character is different from the reason Chloe might want to play a character, right? She might identify with the character for something other than mechanical, and likewise as well. Like I'm a Roadhog player, but I don't identify with Roadhog as a character, but there are people who identify with their characters, and I think Blizzard has created this cast and this universe that is not only conducive to amazing gameplay and like this team experience that's really hard to compete with, but it's also created just this universe that's fun to be in and nice and that you can relate to. And I think it's just sort of it might not be the best shooter out there this year, but I think it's the most consistent shooter out there this year.
Sure. Chloe, you played a ton. And when you played, you exclusively played Soldier 76 and got nothing. You got nothing but headshots. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Don't try and deny it. How did this game appeal to you when it first came out?
What's really interesting about Overwatch is it's a hero shooter. It's kind of a, if I might say, offshoot of kind of like the MOBA sort of like hero class based game. And I'm was never into MOBAs. Like it's just they intimidate me a lot. I'm more into the Twitch based, like you said, Twitch based shooters. But Overwatch it's accessible in the right way. Like it's accessible without dumbing itself down.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned, there's people might play certain characters for different reasons. And I think what's really cool is there are characters there that just depending on how you feel, one night, like people main so many different characters. And I think that's really cool.
I think one of the ways that it remains accessible and yet increases the skill cap at the same time is by allowing you to switch heroes at any part, and that's such a core fundamental part of the game. Another thing that I want to talk about with Overwatch, of course, it is a Blizzard game, is the post-launch support and how fantastic it's been so far.
Yeah.
Not just, hey, here's a cool Summer Games event, here's a cool Halloween event, but also, you know what, we're just going to get rid of duplicate heroes in both ranked and unranked play.
I mean, that's definitely the thing that Blizzard does well, is like adapt to whatever it needs to be done. And specifically the Overwatch team and Jeff Kaplan and all the guys over there, they're super like in touch with the community and understanding what it needs. And maybe those changes that it makes isn't going to please everyone, but like it's better for the health of the game, you know? And it's something Blizzard does great. Like I've gotten back into Diablo lately, and hopefully like this time next year, we're talking about Diablo 4, but in this panel.
Probably not.
But, you know, Diablo as well. Like, you know, when it came out, super broken, but in the last 2 years, it's become something more than what it was. And I think Blizzard is great at that.
Sure. And I'm playing on this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, Overwatch, like I hadn't been into a team shooter like that since Team Fortress 2, which, you know, obviously has a lot of lineage with. And I, like you said, I really like that it has something for just about anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I'm old and slow now, so I need the splash damage of Pharah.
I feel you.
So that's why. But I was also, you know, a pretty good Mercy. Yeah. So there's a lot to do for pretty much anyone who is, even if you've fallen out of shooters, you can just jump into that and find something that caters to how exactly how you want to play.
Sure. If I'm feeling saucy, I'll play Hanzo. If I have had a bad day and I need just my comfort blanket, I'll go to Roadhog or maybe Soldier, you know, like maybe
Symmetra, if you want to be the most hated character. I'm sorry, that's May. I forgot.
That's May.
One more thing that I want to touch on with Overwatch real quickly is the story. And the way that it's told, I think, is unique, and maybe one of the first times that we've seen it. It's told, so it's exclusively multiplayer. There is no campaign. There are no cutscenes. There are out-of-game trailers.
It's
will introduce a
multimedia,
character.
though, right?
Yes,
Like,
right.
yeah.
It transcends the game. There's comics. There's movies. There's a canceled comic, unfortunately, recently. But
It feels a lot like Left 4 Dead for me in that way.
sure, and like Sombra. Like, we have to talk about Sombra. The fact that there was this 6-month-long hunt. It got a little tedious and long-winded at the end there, but what other game has built that amount of hype with such a minimal effort investment or not flashy, hey, look over here advertising, just like we're going to leave a single frame in this next developer update. I think that's insane.
And so much of that is owed to just the incredible fan base too.
Yeah.
Like the way they've kind of built out the canon of the game themselves is a, you know, unseen in any other game in recent years.
I think they play off it totally. Like they've cultivated a fan base for this game. I mean, this game didn't exist last year, and yet look at it now, right? Like this is Blizzard's doing, and they deserve all the credit for it.
All right, and in a masterful display of segueing, I will now talk about another game with the name Watch in the title. And that, of course, is Firewatch. I'm going to toss this one to you, Chloe. Why do you think that Firewatch should be perceived as a game of the year?
So what's cool about Firewatch for me, a lot of similar kind of story-driven games that have come out lately, Life is Strange, Oxenfree from this year, they tend to have kind of like the young adult leanings, which isn't really, I mean, they're fine, you know, if you're into it, but it's not really my thing. Firewatch does a really good job at kind of presenting a more mature kind of adult story. I mean, how many games can you name that are like a sad love story about like people in their early 40s, like / midlife crisis narrative, like... so it's,
Really selling it over here.
I mean, it's something different, and I think that's something games need. You know, we have our Battlefields, our Civs. It's awesome, but it's awesome that games like Firewatch can also exist among these great games. And one really beautiful thing I think that made Firewatch great was the kind of peaceful isolation. Like you play like a, you know, you're in the Wyoming wilderness. It's gorgeous. You're kind of Henry's emotional journey is told in a really subtle way, but like you kind of also have room there for your own journey, kind of just being there by yourself in the woods, thinking about stuff.
Thinking about
My favorite game, in the woods, thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's things in the game that carry that too, right? Like the photo mode, I thought was a really interesting touch. As you're playing the game, you can kind of just take photographs of anything you want, and during the end credits, they actually show you this montage of pictures that you took. So it's like you can kind of see. That's alongside, of course, like photos that have to do with the game, which I won't spoil, but you see like the written narrative kind of right next to your own journey that you took yourself. And I think that was kind of a cool approach for them to take.
Sure.
And also, I mean, the game is just beautiful. Like I love the rural Wyoming setting.
Yeah,
The writing is really well done as well. I appreciate the humor of it. That they're able to have a drama that also has quite a bit of comedy in it.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. Like the game starts out with all these kind of like silly red herrings, and I actually didn't like it when I first played it. I thought that it was going to be this sort of like dumb X-Files kind of mystery. Like not that X-Files is dumb, but you know what I mean. Like they just throw so much.
It was very campy.
Yeah, exactly. They throw so much at you, and then it ends up just being like this incredibly tragic, like this revelation that you make at the end and stuff. And I thought that was really that was handled really well.
Can't believe you're dead the whole time.
Oh no!
Yeah. As soon as that
What a
coin
twist!
filtered in. Indeed.
Well,
All right, let's move on to Darkest Dungeon, a game that we all have a love-hate
a
relationship.
game where you actually are dead the whole time.
Yeah,
No, you're
at
just
least
dying the
inside.
whole time.
So this is a game that is relentlessly punishing, and you can see from our reaction there, where hours of progress can be wiped out in a single roll of the dice. You just get smashed by a boss, and your 3 favorite characters, they're gone. So Dan, how does this game stay fun in spite of its oppressive difficulty?
I mean, for me, it's the unpredictability of it. Like, you never really know how a fight's going to go. You never fall into a pattern of like, here's exactly how I'm going to fight every fight. And it takes a lot of steps to prevent you from falling into those patterns, from denying you things like being able to set up a pre-made team, to also having your characters go slowly insane, and you have to have them sit out for longer periods of time or uneven periods of time. So you might have a team that you really like working together, but this guy's got mental health issues, so you've got to put him in the sanitarium for a while and replace that slot, or just send out a different team to level them up. So it takes a lot of these things on top of just like sometimes the roll of the dice is against you. That on top of just the really in-depth layered combat system, where not only do you have position your guys so that they can use all their abilities, but you have to be aware of what abilities the enemies can use in their order, and you can knock them out of their order and they can knock you out of your order. There's just so many moving parts in this game that every fight feels different and interesting.
Sure, and I think it's a game where you can prepare as much as you absolutely want and still be punished, but also still reap the rewards of. What I think is interesting about the game is there's this out of combat progression where you feel like it's a slog every time, and you're just by the skin of your teeth pulling out these victories and keeping your men alive and your women alive, and then you go to your town and you realize you've upgraded 4 buildings and now they look really nice. And recently they've implemented this system of events where you kind of get these windfalls that I think were really needed, where the sanitarium will be free, or hey, here's a free level 3 guy. And there's stuff that the game doesn't tell you, like when a character hits level 3, they can no longer run missions of level 2s. And at that point I stepped away and I was like, man, I wish they had told me that, because then, but the idea is to not have an A team. The idea is to have a bunch of people that you can swap in and out and try a bunch of combinations. And the game does get very difficult towards the end. But Brandon, I want to toss to you to talk about the narrative, because I don't think there is a better fit that I've played this year to what the gameplay is and how oppressively difficult it is, and the narrative and how destitute and downtrodden it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think I need to say anything. Like, you nailed it right on the head. Like, Darkest Dungeon is maybe my favorite aesthetic and theme of the entire year. It's got that amazing art style. It's super austere and dark, right? And then oh my god, the narrative VO guy is fantastic. Like, I want that guy to narrate my life. He's so good. I looked him up because like I want to keep an eye on what he does next. He's so good, and the Lovecraftian theme that they throw at you deals so well with like the insanity of the mechanics that you're working with, and just like everything feels oppressive and dark and bleak, and like there's no hope. And it mirrors the gameplay so well, because like Dan was saying, when you get into that random fight where by the skin of your teeth, you're gonna finish this mission. You're in the last room, and then in the hallway, you run into this boss that randomly spawns, and you're like, "There's no hope for me to get out of here alive. I either have to retreat or I have to try to fight. Either way, I'm taking a loss." And they mirror themselves so well. And in case I didn't say it, the VO is fantastic.
The atmosphere from the VO, the music, the art style is also dire. It's awesome.
It's bleak and
And I love with the art style how they do so much with so little. Like, there's so few frames of animation. But they do all this crazy parallax stuff where they're moving basically these cutouts around the screen.
These pictures are moving.
And it just conveys so much more than just an actual like animation would in a lot of ways. It does like have to inspire the animation. Like, just looking at it by itself isn't as elaborate as a meticulously animated scene would be, but just there's just a lot going on there. And the way they're able to do that without actually animating everything is amazing to me.
I mean, it feels like a dark gothic fairy tale, like a storybook. And the fact that it is those like limited frames that parallax move together, like feels like the pages of something come out. But yeah, like top to bottom, that game is just presented so well.
And it's got great post-launch support so far. Like
Yeah.
they've added things that every time they add something, the player base is either like yes or no. And then in that case, you can go into the options menu and turn it off. They have their first expansion coming out, which is all vampire themed. Very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, and it came out of early access this year, but it never they've continued that same clip of development where they just keep adding new features, keep adding new stuff.
Yeah.
Great. Changing gears entirely. Let's move on to Titanfall 2. Was that correct? Is that the correct?
I was like, oh, Gears now. Okay,
Gears,
let's talk about Gears.
Gears of War 4. Yes, you can play it on the PC, but that's not what we're going to talk about, nor is it nominated. But Titanfall 2, Brandon,
hey,
you reviewed.
I did.
And you were a really big fan of the single-player campaign, which I think could have easily been super conventional, super AAA, what we were expecting, but I think it was anything but. Tell us what you liked about it.
I mean, like Chloe said, in a year of like really standout single-player campaigns, shooter isn't necessarily a genre that you look to for like a good campaign. And I think what Titanfall 2 did, they, like you said, coming off Titanfall, there wasn't a single player campaign. Like all the narrative structure was inside the multiplayer. So there was a lot of anticipation about like what is Respawn going to do with their first crack at a single player campaign. And like I feel like they hit it out of the park. I mean, there's some things that I feel like could have been done better, but by and large, like they nail the feeling of movement. And the problem that I always see is like, how do you translate that fast, frenetic movement into a linear single player campaign? And they totally nailed it. Like, like it's parkour through canyons, it's parkour through ships, through derelict buildings, and the movement feels so good. It's probably my favorite single player movement that I've ever felt. Like up there with Mirror's Edge. You know, everything feels great. The story itself is fine. Like some of the writing, a lot of the jokes fall flat for me personally. I was expecting like sort of a buddy cop comedy kind of quips and witty back and forth, but
He's
like,
just a robot.
It's not really that. He's just a robot. And like there are times where like, oh, I know, I can already see the joke coming, and boom, there it is. You know, the ending is fine. Like it genuinely ramps up in like the last third of the game. Like its progression level goes like this and then spikes, right? So like it ends strong. But other than that, like it's just enjoyable from start to finish, and it's not overly long. Like it is short and sweet, and it adds enough mechanics that it doesn't recycle. I think there's one point that we can all agree is like the standout mechanic that they add.
Just a little bit of a spoiler.
Without spoiling it. Like there's a part in the game that's really good. Like it's not that bad of a spoiler.
Without spoiling it, still it is something that could have been very conventional. Where you look at it, it's like, okay, there's a guy in a robot suit. It's like, okay, but we know how that could play out. But pretty much time and time again throughout that campaign, they defy expectations and throw things that you didn't expect. And that to me was what really set it above and beyond for me, was that it kept surprising me. And in addition to being this good shooter, it also threw all this really clever puzzle platforming at us.
Mechanically.
That was actually fun. And like, how often does that happen? Like outside of Portal. Like,
and what's so great about the single player campaign is that is all gravy on top of the multiplayer, which is fantastic. And it fixed a lot of the issues that I had with the original game. I felt the original game was very busy. I felt it was always extremely frantic. I could never really get my bearings. And I have a confession to make. I've been playing Titanfall 2 3 to 4 times a week since it launched without fail, for hours a night. I love it. I really enjoy the multiplayer. It's grown on me. And I think the reasons for that are the readability. They now have these almost Overwatch hero-esque Titans where, okay, this one's the fire guy. He's got set moves. So does Ion. So does this other Titan. And so you always know what to expect when you see a certain type of Titan. Also, the progression, I think, was a little bit light in the game compared to something like Call of Duty, where we were expecting, 12 guns to unlock XYZ.
Yeah.
Well, now they've done this, like, prestige on top of prestige system where you can prestige as many times as you want and keep getting rewards. And there's microtransactions rewards, there's promotion based, there's achievement based rewards. There's a lot to love customization wise. And then also you just feel yourself progressing as a player in terms of the skill. And I am a bounty hunt fanatic. I love that mode. A lot of people
it's my favorite mode.
Like attrition, but I love bounty hunt. I love the fact that it's not just killing enemies, it's focusing on objective and then turning in that cash.
Yeah, and it's risk reward, right? Like, do I deposit now or do I wait? Do I go in? Like, I'll haunt around a bank and just kill everybody that comes in to deposit their money, and that's the way that I play bounty hunt.
It really is an impressive broadening of the original concept, because they didn't radically change what it is. It's still guys running around getting called down robots, fight it out, but just the broadening of the range of classes. They had what, 3 in the first one? Three.
They had 3 Titan chassis, but you
Titan
customized
chassis,
them.
Right.
Yeah, now it's
Right, but now it's dramatically more, and they all feel different.
Yeah, and it does bring in that like hero shooter vibe, right? Like I see, like you were saying, James, I see a Titan, like I know what it's capable of, and is it a good matchup against me in this rock paper scissors game that Respawn has made? Like if it's not, then I don't have to engage. You know,
some Titans are weak against pilots, some are weak against Titans. But anyway, let's move on to our next game, The Witness. This was an extremely puzzle-filled game. In fact, it's hundreds of puzzles layered on top of one another. And Chloe, you loved it. You gave it a 10. Why is this a must recommend for fans of the puzzle genre?
Yeah, The Witness.
Where do I start?
I know, really, right?
Start at the 10.
Yeah, start at the 10. So for me, the puzzles in The Witness were especially absorbing because I feel like throughout the game, you're kind of being taught this language. I mean, the puzzles are so simple at the beginning, right? You're just kind of drawing lines between one point to the next, but the way they continue to kind of like iterate on that syntax, like grammar, vocabulary, like all these layers come together in a really interesting way at the end. I think the open world aspect is also really important. I mean, we've had open world puzzle games before, like Myst, obviously, but kind of the way most puzzle games sort of decide the pace of the learning process for you, The Witness, I feel like, subverts that. Like, the whole game is about the learning process, which I think is really interesting. It kind of translates well to, like, a thematic level, too. Like, the game, I wrote this in my review, but the game doesn't necessarily give you the tools to find the right answers. It gives you the tools to ask the right questions, which I think is all what The Witness is about. Admitting you don't know something is as important as figuring something out, I guess. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, yeah, then you know where to start looking.
Exactly.
And I think, go ahead.
Like, there's this moment, I think, that illustrates this really well at the very beginning of the game after you get out of the kind of tutorial area. You pass this door on your left, and it just has all these different symbols on it, all these different colors, and you're just like, I don't know what any of this is, and you have to walk away. And it's like that process of admitting you don't know is what kind of opens your mind up to the rest of the game.
And one of the things I love about the game is there are all these different meta layers, right? Is that there are puzzles comprised of other puzzles. Like there are things going on that you don't even notice until you start learning and broadening your horizons and thinking like literally anything could be a component that I need.
Yeah, and right when you get to the end game too, everything you've learned is just completely subverted in a really interesting way, but in a way that also makes sense for what you've learned.
Yeah, when you look at screenshots or video of the Witness, the basic things, you're just seeing somebody draw the little line on a puzzle. But for me, it's so much about literally and figuratively looking at things from different angles, and just seeing how these puzzles exist in that world is something you just don't expect going into it, and that really kind of expands how you think about this game when you're playing it.
And also just kind of how you exist in that space too. Like one of the coolest things for me in the game is, like, I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's like you can walk past the same like tree like 100 times, and then on the 101st time you notice something different about it. You see an image or something in it, and it's not the tree that's changed, it's you that's changed. Like the game teaches you new ways of seeing things.
You have new context,
right?
To look
so
at,
then you
at
come into a
things
room like this and you go crazy and think you want to like.
Oh, I totally got Tetris syndrome after playing The Witness. Like I was seeing lines everywhere, just puzzles everywhere.
All right, I have one more question I want to ask you about this really quickly.
Yeah.
Do you think that those of us who don't find the game particularly appealing from what we've seen of it in terms of footage, screenshots, and maybe don't have that great of a track record with puzzle games in general, can you recommend this to us?
If you don't like puzzle games, absolutely not. Again, there are hundreds of puzzles in this game, but there is a lot happening under the surface. There are so many secrets to find. There's the whole end game, obviously, and then there's this whole secret end game too. And there's also just things hidden in the world, and like there's a whole story that you can ignore if you want, or you can dig super deeply into. If you're somebody who enjoys finding secrets in a game, then yeah, definitely check it out. But if you don't like puzzles, then might not be your game.
Cool. Talking about deep puzzle games and strategy, let's move on to Doom. Doom is a return to old school shooter action. It's got health pickups. It's got 10 weapons that you can switch between at any time. It has power-ups. And somehow this game not only works in 2016, but is actually refreshing in a strange way. Dan, what did you think of the campaign?
I think it's safe to say that if you're not into The Witness, you may very well be into Doom.
I am.
It is a very tightly designed kind of homage to the original game in a 2016 context, where you can move it fully in 3 dimensions, and you're moving at full speed most of the time if you want to stay alive, And that just you're picking up all kinds of great weapons, fighting a huge variety of enemies, using a bunch of different skills with a lot of power. It is that kind of empowerment kind of game, and just the flow with which you can tear through enemies just feels really good.
Yeah.
And bounce around a level.
In the same way that The Witness teaches you to look at the world from a new, interesting angle, Doom teaches you to kill monsters in new and interesting ways. And another way that does that statistically is this progression system that I think is really interesting and unexpected. I didn't expect to be making choices between what I want on what gun and how that's informing my playstyle.
And part of that is because of the Doom name. It's like the Doom. You went into Doom expecting something very similar to the original game, which is a very straightforward run and gun shooter, which everything has built off of since, but this takes it in a different direction with that upgrade system.
Sure. What little story is there? I appreciate that they understand the brevity of it, and your guy always just punches whatever the narrative element is.
They don't take it too seriously.
Doesn't matter, just punch it. The other thing that I really enjoy...
Doesn't matter, just punch it.
Yeah, that's the Doom guy philosophy. The other thing that I really enjoy that I wish the game did more of is the bosses. Yeah. There are a handful of bosses, but not nearly enough. And I don't think you're introduced to your first serious boss early enough. And when I fought those bosses, I have one of those crazy MMO mice, and I had all my weapons bound to it, and I really felt in control. And that was a great feeling. Like, okay, he's doing an animation. I'm going to line up a railgun shot that's going to take a second to charge.
Right.
Hit for max damage, get close. Now I pull out the shotgun, do this. I had this whole flow to it, and it felt really good. But I just wanted to see more bosses. And I hope that in the future, we've seen a lot of multiplayer content, which... I don't know if you're a fan of multiplayer. I didn't particularly care for it. I thought it was okay.
I didn't really bother with it. Like, from the beta, I already knew it wasn't going to shine.
Sure.
From word of mouth, I knew it wasn't going to really be my thing. So I just stuck to the single player and just had an absolute blast with it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome popcorn shooting, right? Like it knows exactly what it is and it delivers on it. It's fast and frenetic and just gory as all hell.
And I'd say it's more than popcorn, just because it's got nuance to how you can string kills together, bounce from enemy to enemy, know what weapon to use on what enemy. Like I think there's more depth to it than that.
So Dan, I want to ask you a question about the review of this game, because I think a lot of people watching will be wondering, how can we consider a game that we gave a low 7 as potentially one of the best PC games of the year? And it makes sense internally, like we understand how the process works, but externally it may be a little confusing. So can you just explain to people the logic here?
Yeah, I mean, a review is fundamentally one person's opinion, and like we do bounce those around internally a little bit, but not everybody has played it. So we're looking at, at the time that the review is being written, not everyone has played it. So we're just looking at the arguments internal to the review. Do those make sense in their own context? And one person's opinion at IGN doesn't represent everybody's opinion. Chloe likes The Witness more than I do, but what are you going to do?
Sure.
I'm not going to tell her that she can't tell everybody that she thinks The Witness is a masterpiece. That's absolutely fine by me.
Great. Okay. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of context. I know that it can be a little frustrating if you see something nominated that wasn't received particularly well, but again, one person's opinion there. So let's move on to Stardew Valley. I like how
very like Doom.
Yes, I'm expressly having a game that's totally different every single time for the most part. So I really like the core conceit of Stardew Valley in terms of its narrative. It kind of spoke to me getting back to nature. That's really cool. And then I got to the farm and it was like, okay, now uproot 20 trees. And I was like, I'm going to go make dinner. But Chloe, you've put more than 80 hours into this. You have spreadsheets. You say that there's this weird dungeon system to it. You like this game a lot. Can you explain what's not immediately apparent about it?
Welcome to Spreadsheet Valley.
No, it's true though. I mean, Stardew Valley surprised me a lot. It's not that I don't think games that look pleasant and cute can't have a ton of depth, but I mean, over 80 hours in, I'm still discovering new things, both about just the farming, the mining, the dungeon crawling. There's, the whole relationship with the villagers aspect. Like, you can get married. I finally got married in the game, and now I'm getting ready to get divorced.
Congratulations.
Which actually,
sorry to hear that.
they just added divorce into the game in a recent update, which is also really cool that he's still updating the game consistently. But yeah, Stardew Valley is awesome. People have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of information about this game. Everything from just things that villagers, gifts you can give villagers that they really like, to crop revenue calculators. There's a
Talking
lot.
about getting back to nature. If you want to get back to nature, really it's all about spreadsheets
crunch
and data.
those numbers.
Yes.
Well, and so what's really cool about Stardew Valley also is it actually has this really deep message about community and the environment and capitalism. The story of the game is you escape from your kind of like soul sucking, 9 to 5
Office-based job, right.
Yeah, and you go back to your grandfather's farm that he left for you, and there's this Joja Mart, this corporation kind of trying to take over this little tiny town, and you can totally destroy the community center and have it replaced with this like Joja Mart warehouse.
Oh no.
Or you can rebuild the community center, and like the game changes completely like depending on what you want to do. Like if you replace the warehouse, if you replace the community center with the warehouse, you purchase all the upgrades like just with money. But if you build out the community center, then you choose to have deeper connections with the people in the village and like the just the forest and the ocean and all the different places, and you like craft recipes and you bring them to the community center and it gets like revitalized and stuff, and it's really fun. Stardew Valley might actually be one of my favorite games of the year, like top 3 definitely.
Wow.
It sounds like I need to play more of it. All right, this is the last game on our list, but certainly not the least. This is XCOM 2. I was a huge fan of XCOM, and when XCOM 2 came out, I went back and finished my run of XCOM, and then I was XCOM'd out, and I still have yet to play XCOM 2. So Dan, please educate me. Why is this game fantastic on its own?
I'm definitely not XCOM'd out. I've spent over around 250 hours of that game this year alone. So I would like to go back and play more because it's a very good game. The fundamental biggest difference between this and the first the rebooted XCOM Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within. Well, I mean, the setting is different. There's kind of a role reversal. You've gone from being a defense force to a guerrilla insurgency. So there's more of a stealth element now. But that kind of plays into what I think is the bigger difference, which is mission variety. For one thing, every level that you fight in, except for certain story-based missions, is procedurally generated. So I played a whole bunch of Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within as well. And in that game, I would land on a map and go like, oh, I know this map because I already played a bunch of it. That just never happens anymore. I can't memorize these maps. I can look at structures and say, oh, I know something about that structure. I know where I can set up for that structure, but I don't know what's beyond it. So much like with Darkest Dungeon, it's keeping things interesting by preventing me from settling into a pattern of how I deal with everything. There are tactics you can adopt that will work in a lot of cases, but it'll still throw you curveballs. I like to think of it as kind of like playing poker. You're being dealt a hand, and there's only so much you can do with that hand. Sometimes you have to fold and retreat. To avoid losing your all your money,
especially when you're playing on Iron Man, like you tend to do.
Like I do. That's really the only way to play. Once you figured out the fundamentals, like you've got to raise the stakes by saying, okay, these people are going to go out, and if they die, they're dead.
Brutal.
And I've got to name them all after your friends, right? So,
did James Duggan die?
Many times.
How many of us have you killed?
All of you, many times. 250 hours.
That's why I was going to say, like that's a lot of bodies on your conscience.
Absolutely.
So there's 2 levels to this game, a lot like Darkest Dungeon, in the sense that there is the battle mode, and then there is kind of the meta base building. We're trying to mobilize this resistance against this oppressive alien force that has subverted humanity. What is the upper tier like? What is the base building like? Do you see a lot of improvements there?
I mean, it's similar in a lot of ways to the original. It's kind of it's a very light strategy game in a lot of ways. It's you're building out your base using the resources you've collected from missions and rewards you get, and upgrading your capabilities that you then take back into the field. I wouldn't say that the strategy game is what you should play this for by any means. It's more of a means to an end, which is the tactical combat.
Great. Closing thoughts, guys?
Yeah, it's been a good year. Like that's my closing thought. Like PC usually does well given the variety that you get on it, but this year in particular, I think there's a lot of strong contenders in a lot of different genres.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Overwatch is probably a clear favorite amongst a lot of people. I mean, for me, I don't see how I can not vote for XCOM 2 with the impact it's had on my life.
The next time you boot it up, it's just like, I know,
Dan. But when people vote for Overwatch, like I understand. Sure. It's like that's a real good game. And a lot of these are just really good games.
The thing is, it's a hard decision,
Yeah, I mean, just mirroring what Brandon said, I think it's awesome that just the sheer variety of games that are. I mean, being a PC gamer, we're not really surprised, but like on our top 10 list, I think it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's been a dwindling console exclusivity in terms of first-party development on console, and we have really received the boons of that.
Well, especially now that everything that Microsoft puts out is also on PC.
I know.
on,
I'm going to play Gigantic, the open beta, as soon as I get home. And it's amazing to see, hey, everybody's developing for this platform that you're using.
Sure.
And I really felt that this year. I think this whole list is just, look at all the genres on here and all the variants, and it's insane.
Shooters, strategy games, resource management games,
Story-driven.
You got spreadsheets about planting crops. There's something for everybody. All right, thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Dan. That was a look at the nominees for 2016. But be sure to check back on January 6th for our pick for Best of PC 2016. And for all things PC games, keep it right here on IGN.